Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Wherever you are, I can just see the numbers going up, so I'll just wait till the numbers seem to pause while people's video connections work, and then we'll get started. Fantastic. Okay, kia ora. Welcome to LEA's annual general meeting, number 11, held for the first time via online connection, obviously due to changes in the context this year. What I'll do is we'll run through the AGM today, and then at 5:30 we're going to hand over to the Mayfield Project, and we've got a terrific presentation lined up for everyone to watch, and I think everyone's going to really enjoy that. Look, to start with, an acknowledgement of countries for those of you in Australia or for those of us in New Zealand. So we acknowledge and respect traditional owners across Australia as the original custodians of our land and waters, their unique ability to care for the country and deep spiritual connection to it. We honour elders past and present whose knowledge and wisdom has and will ensure the continuation of cultures and traditional practices. E mihi ana mātua kia tangata whenua o Aotearoa. He kaitiaki rātau I te whenua me te taioa. We acknowledge the tangata whenua of Aotearoa. They are guardians of the land and the natural world. Kia ora. Okay, we begin firstly a couple of apologies. Firstly from Alan Hayes, from Hamilton Hayes Henderson Architects, and also from Stephen Armstrong from Trinity Anglican Schools Corporation. Our first order of business, first of all, just welcome. Thank you very much for coming along this evening. It's great to have you here. Hopefully everyone can hear and see okay. We begin with the confirmation of the minutes of the 10th AGM held on Friday the 15th of November of 2019. And that was part of the papers that came out to people. So what we need, please, first of all, is somebody to confirm those minutes and somebody to second those minutes, please. We will have to use the chat function for this, and we'll ask people to, when we're asking for nominations and things, or for seconding, if you could just use the chat function, and Helen will keep a beady eye on that and pick out the names. Thank you. That was easy. Okay, first up, presentation of annual reports. And I'll start off with the chair's report before we go into the financial reports. And copies of this will be sent out for people so they can, and made available for people so they can see them in full. So look, I'm pleased to submit the chair's report for 2019-2020, which kind of takes us up to the end of the 2020 financial year. And let's face it, it's been quite a year. As everyone will be aware, the year has brought with it a wide range of rather unexpected challenges. COVID's had a particularly significant impact on our local and regional activities, our events, our membership base, and to a certain extent our finances as well. However, we are in a much better position than we thought at first we might have been. Our chapter committees have committed to reinventing the membership experience through innovative means, maintaining activities, creating new style of activities, discussions and communication throughout the COVID period. And look, I'm indebted to everyone really for the effort that's gone into adapting our activities, innovating, identifying new ways of operating and communicating with members, and of course leveraging digital opportunities. And I think you'll agree that the offerings that have come out this year have been really first-class professional learning opportunities. If not face-to-face, then they're digital. In terms of membership, our members were 5,343 contacts in the database, which is actually up compared to last year. And we have currently 951 members. By mid-October, 633 people had renewed their membership, which was really pleasing. We were able to offer members a payment holiday for 3 months from the 1st of July to the 30th of September, just to try and help out with some of that uncertainty during the pandemic. Look, our core business is in promoting and conversations and connections through events. So this financial year sort of splits into 2 periods, really, sort of before COVID and during COVID. And inevitably, activities were curtailed significantly in the latter. So the 37 events took place this year, including the regional awards and the regional day out in Adelaide last year. And that compared to 67 events the previous financial year. What we were able to do, though, was chapters were able to host webinars over the last 6 months, mostly free of charge, and get high quality content out for people to participate in and enjoy. So look, I'm really appreciative of all the hard work that chapter committees and their administrators have done over that time for organising such fantastic virtual events and, where possible, face-to-face events. And also a particular thank to Ellie Dickinson and Brianna Rickman from BCC Management for assisting with those webinar events. One of our key strategic areas is around maintaining a sort of a research arm to our operation, if you like. And as you know, we've been highly involved in the LEA project, which is rounding up this year. The team at LEA have been doing a great job of finalising the research, really, in terms of publishing those outputs, sort of accumulating the findings of the project in preparation for sort of producing the final reports. Many of the PhDs are in the final stages of their studies as well, and are contributing significant inputs, insights into the project findings. I think you'll agree that we've benefited enormously from the engagement in that project over the last 4 years, and it's been a great model of how we as an organisation can become a valued stakeholder in a major research project that is the sort of thing we wouldn't be able to do on our own. And I know the members have got a keen, enthusiasm for maintaining that kind of approach as part of the type of research we go in for. The awards this year were hugely popular. We really, through the huge amount of work that Soraya Ramsey put in, and also Bill Dixon as well in the background, managed to get up to 122 entries, which was a 40+% increase on entries from the previous year. There was a new category for small projects under the 2 million, which had attracted quite a few people as well, and all of those entries were featured in the 2020 Contemporary Learning Spaces publication, which was a terrific publication. And if you haven't got your hands on a copy yet, I'd certainly recommend it. The Life Membership Review panel was convened to oversee the entries, and in May this year, virtually, the Life memberships were announced to Phil Idle in Perth and also to Richard Leonard in Melbourne. Their citations will be included in these meeting papers, but obviously due to the conference cancellation, the awards are still pending, but they will be given out at the earliest opportunity. In terms of our international role, Mark Trotter took on the role of International Director in October of last year. And much of the work that's been going on is related very much to the establishment of a transitional global board to see the transition from what you might think of as a US-centric model of governance to an international one. This is a 2-year advisory board charged with the sort of final determination of the structure of a global organisation. And Mark, along with Deb OReilly, have been sitting on this board. And we hugely appreciate their presence and their input, and we know they're having an impact on that process. In terms of communications, we've continued to bring sort of research, chapter updates, webinar links and things like that through Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. And a particular thanks to Soraya, Danny, Martin, Daniel Smith and the Communications Task Force established in May for working in that area. Look, one of our main activities of the year is obviously our conference. Obviously restrictions there meant that we weren't able to make it to Christchurch, but I do want to two things probably. First of all, to say we really want to thank the New Zealand team for all of the work that they did undertake in preparation for what was going to be a stunning conference. So particular thanks to Jackie Allen and to Carmel Wade. And really a promise that, yeah, we will get back there, and we are looking very much at when we can go back, all things considered, but we don't want that waste and a really good story to go to waste. Preparations are well underway for a 2021 conference, although it's a little bit early to say how big is it going to be and what's it going to look like. But that's definitely a sort of, yeah, watch this space, and as time goes on, we'll get news out about that. Unfortunately, also the regional day out, obviously, which is where we should be now, was cancelled, and so to the inaugural boutique conference in Byron Bay that Daniel Smith and Mark Trotter had put significant time and effort into convening. But I can't help feeling that idea will come back and probably be even more relevant post-COVID. In terms of sponsorship and things like this, you know, we rely heavily on sponsorship, and that's obviously taken quite a hit both regionally and at chapter level. But I do really admire the work that people have gone on to maintain those really critical relationships and to keep those sponsors engaged. We have looked at alternative opportunities for them to be involved, particularly through webinars and online events. And so we really thank those sponsors for their ongoing commitment and look forward to their continued engagement in the future. On a staffing side, as you know, Linda Morgan finished up in August 2019 to take on a new role in South Australia. We hired 2 new staff with the idea of supporting Helen in her role on a part-time basis, and also with our communications and digital aspects of our work. We got as far as opening an office in the old Beechworth jail, and things were looking really good. However, with the pandemic, the conference cancellation and the revised priorities of the business, sadly, both of those appointments had to be terminated in April 2020. Probably the, you know, our strategic plan, some of the things that we have managed to do, obviously some of our activities have taken a hit, but we have managed to move forward some other things, particularly looking at the sales pitch and really kind of landing that idea of who we are and what we stand for. There's been a review of the research strategy, which has come out with some really useful outcomes. And probably thirdly, around formalising the Mayfield project in connection with the council. As you see in the accompanying report, the Mayfield project's been a real standout this year, conducted purely online with 21 participants across 5 time zones and culminating in a terrific publication. It's been a significant achievement. So a huge thanks to Danny Martin, assisted by Marino Rossi, who has made this happen. And I think that's a project that's just going from strength to strength, absolutely. We know there are some aims to continue with next year, over the next financial year or so, and that very much around our web presence, unifying the database and updating the website, and some internal sort of information systems, and then looking at how we disseminate the good research that we're part of. From my point of view as a chair, look, we have an extraordinary team of people on our council, and I'm constantly impressed with the quality of discussion, ideas, energy and commitment demonstrated. And I'd like to pass on a huge thanks to all of the members of our council who have taken part in multiple conversations and things this year as we've tried to adapt or pivot, if you like that word, to a new way of working and a new normal. So to all the Chapter Council, thank you very much indeed. I've really appreciated that support. To our exec, Deb, Marino, Lawrence, Bill, Mark, thanks very much indeed for your dedication and advice. I've learned heaps from you all over this year, and I'm really grateful for all the work that you've done and the input that you've put in. And finally, Helen, I'm hugely grateful for all your work as well, in keeping us ticking over during this tricky last 6 months. You've definitely rolled with all the myriad chops and changes this year, and I'd just like to extend a huge thanks on behalf of everybody here for keeping us on the path this year, and the work that you've done. So, yeah, thanks to you all, and that's my report for this year. And I think I don't think I need anyone to accept that. I think that's as it is. So thanks very much indeed. What I'll do now is hand over to Lawrence Robinson, our Treasurer, for his report.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to keep it quite short so that we can get on with the Mayfield information and session. But all this report and our financial papers will go out with the AGM minutes as well, so that you'll all get to see them. But not surprisingly, this year was extremely challenging for us. We started off at the beginning of the year looking forward to a great conference in Christchurch and looking forward to potentially making a surplus of around $100,000 for the year. With Christchurch not being able to go ahead, that turned into a loss of over $135,000 for the organisation. So overall, a turnaround of $250,000 in our situation, which is almost entirely due to COVID and just not being able to run events. So really a devastating year for us financially. And as Chris said, that's led to us having to terminate the 2 staff we had and close the office and really pull our heads back in and just see and ride out the COVID pandemic. Overall, while the whole organisation made a loss of $136,000 and region itself made a loss of $125,000, the chapters remained fairly steady. The smaller chapters, some of them actually made a surplus. The larger chapters made a loss. The exception was New Zealand, which off the back of a lot of work that they'd done pre-conference to get events up and running, had a loss of around $24,000. So that's really hurt their bottom line, and hopefully they'll be able to pick that back up in the next year or so. And I think once the pandemic's over, we'll be back to a situation where we'll have really good turnovers. But this year, our turnover dropped from about $1 million in the previous financial year to close to $300,000. So quite a big drop in activity. As Chris said, we rely heavily on sponsorship, and this year has been no different. Our main sponsors for the conference have allowed us to hold their sponsorship funds to next year, which has stabilised our bank balance. But we'll need to deal with that in the financials going forward. But we encourage everybody to continue to patronise the sponsors. They're a really important part of our organisation's operations. The audit process this year went very smoothly, and I'd really like to express a big thank you to Kingsley, Belinda and Emil, the bookkeepers who make it all happen in the background, to Edwin and his team who do the audit, and also to Helen, who just does a fantastic job keeping us all in line. So just sort of in summary, that the executive, as you're probably aware of from previous AGMs, made a decision about 5 or 6 years ago to build our balance sheet and build our cash reserves so that the organisation could withstand just about any financial shock. And that decision has really paid dividends this year. Without having that cash reserve, we could have really been in a lot of trouble with COVID coming along. And we are aware that the American organisation, for instance, is really not in the same position as we are. We're very sound now and going into the future, and the financials next year should actually report a much better position again. And as Chris mentioned, when COVID finally passes, we'll get on to overhauling the website and database, and probably looking to build our staff back up again and run the boutique conference later next year, all things permitting. As always, we welcome member suggestions for additional initiatives. We do have money in the bank and we're able to spend it. So we look forward to having ideas come forward for initiatives. So we're looking forward to a great 2021 with Brisbane underway for planning. That's been delayed to late June, July, and there'll be more news coming out on that shortly. And we're hoping that with being able to run the conference again and events, face-to-face events in the new year, our next year will be much better. So that's it for my report. My official role now is to move that we accept the Auditors Report for the year 2019-2020, which shows a loss of 136,588. So if I can have someone second that in the chat room. Thank you, Felicity. And if there are any dissenting voices, can you please make yourselves known in the chat room? Otherwise, we'll consider that that motion is passed. Don't see anyone there. So the next motion that I need to move is regarding the appointment of the auditor for the financial year 2021. We've received a fee proposal from Allmartin Waters, who are our ongoing auditors, and they've provided a fee proposal very much in line with the last few years of $7,000 for the region and $500 for each of the international chapters. So if I can move that we appoint Allmartin Waters for the audit again next year and accept their fee proposal for $7,000 plus the 2 regions, that would be great. Thanks, Daniel. And if there are any dissenters, make yourselves known. And I believe that's it for my official business. So I will hand back to Chris. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lawrence. Okay, item 4 is the election of board members. There were 3 positions up for election this year: Treasurer, Secretary and Chair-elect. There were 3 nominations, 1 for each of these positions. So this is no need to hold an election, I'm delighted to announce. Means also there's no acrimonious and bitter campaigning. There's no accusations of dodgy voting or dodgy ballots, and hopefully no legal sort of dealings around recounts and things like that. It's kept it nice and simple. So the following people have been elected during this process. So to the position of Treasurer, Lawrence Robinson. I'm just pausing for effect and applause for these people. Thank you very much, Lawrence. To the position of Secretary, Danny Martin from Hable in Brisbane. And to the position of Chair-elect is Daniel Smith from Leaf Architecture in Sydney. My sincere thanks to all 3 of you. Danny and Daniel, I know you've thought long and hard about taking on these positions. And we hugely appreciate the contribution we know that you will make in the future. So thank you very much indeed. I know you thought long and hard about taking that on. Lawrence, thanks for your continued service, and you've proven a wise head during this last year. And we really appreciate your significant input, in, not only in terms of the Treasury role, but also your understanding of the governance aspects of LEA. So thanks very much indeed. Thank you to all 3 of you, and congratulations. The next one, Life membership. This year there were, we did open it up, but there were no nominations for Life membership for this round. So there are no awards to make. Next year we'll open it up again. And nearly there, acknowledgements, some acknowledgements to make, certainly at the first of a chapter level, finishing up this year at the end of their terms as chapter chairs is Eamon Broderick in WA, and also Michael Mitchell at ACT. And thirdly is Lauren Cameron in the Singapore chapter. So thanks very much indeed to those 3. Also outgoing this year is Deb OReilly as past chair. Deb, you've made an absolutely immense contribution to our organisation during your 6 years on the exec, and I know time before that as well. And certainly for me, you've been a huge mentor through this last couple of years, and we've really enjoyed your involvement. You've got a wonderful strategic head on your shoulders, and you've made a massive impact in that area and helping to drive some of our strategy. Thanks very much for everything you've done, Deb, and we'll look forward to saying thank you properly when we see you next. And secondly, Bill Dixon, our Regional Secretary. Bill's been involved in the organisation for a long time as well, and has been Secretary since 2016. So Bill, thanks very much indeed. We've really valued all your input, not only into the secretarial roles, but also particularly the awards role as well. And also we've really valued your opinion and your expertise when it's come to sort of matters of employment, for sure. So those are my acknowledgements, and yeah, Marino, I'm delighted to be able to hand over now to Marino Rossi, who's the smart one with the tie, yeah, thanks very much indeed for the opportunity. I'd just like to say thanks for the opportunity to take on this role over the last couple of years, and thoroughly enjoyed it and learned heaps, and really enjoyed all the connections I've made and all the learning I've had as a result of it. Kia ora. Over to you, Marino.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening, viewers. It's a privilege to fill this role for the next 2 years, so I really appreciate Chris handing over. When I was getting my head around this role at the start of this year, the key word that came to mind, particularly when the pandemic hit, was the word rebuild. But I think just looking back on the situation now, I think the word is now reconnect, because I think what we've seen, and particularly if you look at the work that Chris has just covered in terms of what's been happening, that we don't need to rebuild. It's all there. It's just about getting the connections to happen again, and reconnecting as we sort of move out of this phase of the pandemic. So as Mark Trotter would say, it's certainly been a year for the true believers. And just to cap on what Chris has covered, you can see in the chapter activities, there's been a huge amount of activity, as much as it can be done through Zoom, etc. A lot of chapter activity across the country, across New Zealand as well. A highly successful awards program, the most entries we've ever had. You're about to listen to an amazing Mayfield project that's again been undertaken during this trying circumstances. We're rebuilding links to research through ILETC, and there's some really exciting news coming up about the conference next year. So as much as we say, and I come to this role as an architect, that's my background, and you would have heard the saying, the environment as a third teacher. I'd like to borrow one of the thoughts from Professor Lindsay Ides in one of the workshops we had, where COVID has been a teacher, and as a result, you've been hearing words like well-being, resilience, coping, adapting. That all requires an enabling environment. And what Professor Ides has suggested is that COVID has dismantled society. We discover what makes society work so we can improve it. And that's pretty much, I think, the mindset we're in now going forward. It is about improving what LEA does. And I really hope to support that as much as possible. Because one thing that we do know is that resilience is not enough. It's about fast-tracking new ideas. So things like blending virtual and actual learning together, technology becoming more embedded and more inclusive for both our students and staff that use learning facilities. And just the sheer fact that humans thrive by bringing imagination and purpose together. So there's an amazing set of new possibilities going forward, I think. And I think you'll get a glimpse of that too shortly in the work that these marvellous Mayfielders have done in their topic of activating curiosity and learning, and how we do that, particularly in COVID. You've seen in some industries, people have had to just start with a whole new set of skill sets and relearn. So the importance of that. So just to recap, my vision is to bring about strengthen the collective effort of LEA and really assist in how LEA builds and shapes the change ahead for all of us. So I really look to bring that collective effort to bear through the help of all our members and chapters. So I'd like to welcome all the members here tonight. I'd like to welcome all the new members, thanks to retiring members. And importantly, a thank you to Chris Bradby for his amazing stewardship over the last 2 years, and particularly over the last 12 months, which has certainly been a year to remember. So based on timing, I'm going to introduce everyone to the Mayfield Project, which is due to start at 5:30. And if we have a bit of a gap, you can certainly have a tea break, but I'd certainly encourage everyone to stay around and enjoy the presentation from Mayfielders, headed by Danny, I must say.
Thanks, Marino. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Danny Martin. I'm a senior architect at Hayball in Brisbane, and I'm the current Mayfield Project Chair for LEA. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the presentation for the 2020 Mayfield Project tonight. For those that don't know, the Mayfield Project is a collaborative exploration for early career professionals, bringing together educators, planners, and designers to investigate a current issue or theory affecting learning environments. Named to honour one of LEA's founders, John Mayfield, the program builds on the Young Professionals Project John ran in 2006. Since its inception in 2009, over 150 Mayfielders have been through the ranks, sharing their passion and knowledge with the wider membership. Running every 2 years, the project has often faced challenges where we thought it could not go ahead. This year was certainly no different. For this, our 6th Mayfield project, we were presented with some very unique challenges. Just a few weeks prior to our planned first workshop in Sydney, the country shut down. Suddenly, our collaborative hands-on project had to pivot to accommodate an online-only environment. Luckily, we had a committed group of young professionals and some extraordinarily talented facilitators in the form of NoTosh, and the project proceeded in a really interesting way. It's been a very different process, sharing everything online and overseeing this work without actually meeting any of the Mayfielders in person. This year's Mayfielders has risen to the challenge and I believe have created something incredibly special. Investigating the ideas of creativity and curiosity in learning, the project evolved to a lived experience of the very themes they were researching. The resulting report is a brilliant combination of experience and learnings. This PDF is available now online. A complimentary link will be sent to all members tonight, and the report is also available for purchase by non-members. I'll hand over to the Mayfielders shortly to share what they've discovered, but firstly, I'd just like to give a few quick thanks. Thank you to LEA for their continued support of the Mayfield Project, including creating a Mayfield Project Committee so that we continue to invest in the sustainability and longevity of the project. Thank you to the inaugural Mayfield Committee members, Avril Moore, Amon Broderick and Marino Rossi, and to NoTosh, who agreed to work with us again for their 3rd Mayfield Project, especially the insightful work of facilitators Jeremy and Chantel. And finally, of course, thank you to the 2020 Mayfield, as well as their employers who have allowed their participation this year. This year was not an easy one for a lot of people, but you've continued to work through the project to prepare an extraordinary result. Thank you for all your contributions. I hope you've enjoyed the project as much as I have enjoyed learning from you all.
Thanks, Danny. Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Davis from Infrastructure and Planning in the Department of Education in Victoria. I would just like to note that we're presenting today during NAIDOC Week, and we would like to acknowledge that in respect to the traditional owners across Australia as the original custodians of our lands and waters, their unique ability to care for the country and deep spiritual connection to it. I would personally like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri of the Woiwurrung in the Kulin Nation where I'm presenting from today. We honour elders past and present whose knowledge and wisdom has and will ensure the continuation of cultures and traditional practices. We extend our respect to other elders and Koori people present today.
Kia ora, ko Nadia toku ingoa, no tamaki makoto aho, he kaiako o te oke nā para pohatu. I am Nadia Tuna, I'm from Auckland. I'm an educator currently based at Stonefield School. E mihi anō mātua ki a tangata whenua o Aotearoa. Ki kai ki rātou I te whenua me te taio. We acknowledge the tangata whenua of Aotearoa, the guardians of the land and the natural world. Cool. Be introduced to us. We are the 2020 Mayfield team, a diverse bunch consisting of 6 facility planners, 7 designers, 5 educators from across Australasia. As we know, this has been an unprecedented year, significantly impacting the way in which we live and ultimately the ways in which we have had to work. The 2020 Mayfielders met during this pandemic, and it has drastically changed how we have had intended on connecting. The face-to-face was no longer, and we were thrust into collaborating from a distance. Not only did we need to figure out ways of collaborating, but we also had to negotiate time zones. I actually think the most challenge was for the New Zealanders, who being the later team. Our learning journey began with NOTOSH. They facilitated 4 workshops via Zoom between June and September 2020, as well as introducing us to our workspace, which was Meadow. For those of you that don't know, Meadow is an online collaborative whiteboard, which is pictured here. This tool was absolutely invaluable and allowed us to develop our project, sharing ideas, content and wonderings despite being in isolation. It was also these very circumstances that sparked insightful discussions about distance learning and the future of learning environments in a post-COVID world, a theme that is threaded throughout our publication.
My name is Angelina, an architectural graduate from New Zealand. It's my pleasure to introduce our research, which is an inquiry-based design thinking process. Our aim is to make a tangible difference to how future learning spaces are proposed, designed, and used. Even though the LEA conference wasn't able to take place this year, we kept the theme of the Mayfield Project as reactivate curiosity and learning. Our thoughts evolved during the course of our collaboration. We found the concept of creativity to correlate with curiosity. So the overarching inquiry that we arrived at is, how might we reactivate creativity and learning and give space for lifelong curiosity?
Hi, I'm Chili Caddy. I'm a landscape architect from WA. We'd now like to share with you 4 of the workshop activities that we undertook. These were led by NOTOSH and were key in distilling our provocation, as well as the tools themselves now becoming part of our individual kit of parts for future learning and exploration. I will now share with you one of the 9 workshop activities. So in small groups, we used this squid tool to delve deeper into topics related to our provocation, relating to curiosity and creativity. These question-answer question scenarios resulted in known knowns or ungoogleable questions. Our squids enabled us to identify key values for both creativity and curiosity and their defining points. We then took our unknown knowns as the basis for our next workshop activity, which was the experiments.
Hi, my name's Jo Frith and I'm one of the educators on the project from Sydney, New South Wales. The Mayfielders were asked to experiment with ideas around curiosity and to see what human data they could discover which may benefit curiosity in learning and learning spaces. The experiments were based on a hunch or assumption which emerged from interviews and squid activities which they were eager to test. Some examples of assumptions that were investigated were how the physical environment impacts curiosity, examining how the importance of rewards for being curious varied amongst people, and exploring how the delivery of information using either visual or text sparked curiosity the most. Here you will see an overview of the findings from the experiment by a Mayfielder who explored the delivery of information using either the visual or text to see which sparked more curiosity. The final experiment outcome indicated that more opportunities for generating curiosity were supported by visual delivery.
Hi, my name is Jan Mollison and I'm an educator at Marist College, Bendigo. We were lucky enough to be part of a workshop with Steve Collis from the Touchline Institute, and he developed the Touchline tool. The tool really resonated with us and we felt it could be useful in all of our different contexts. The Touchline Institute described this tool as an instrument for cultural change and transformation. And while using it for our purpose, creating moments of curiosity and creativity, we discovered that it is not sufficient to think of the physical space alone when designing for these ideas. Steve described how 3 key elements need to be present if we are to have spaces that inspire and create curious and creative learners. The 3 elements, as seen in the 3 hexagons in the graphic, include the physical space, the information present within the space, and a shared understanding of how the space is used. And it is a balance of these 3 ideas that all contribute to successful learning environments and learning cultures. Next slide. We soon discovered that it was often a lack of shared or cultural understanding that led to unsuccessful spaces or moments. We participated in workshops where we reverse engineered moments of creativity and curiosity, and we unpacked what these moments would need and found that collaboratively constructing shared understandings and routines around curiosity and creativity were critical. These understandings needed to involve the stakeholders, so whether it be the learners within the learning environment, like being part of creating these routines, or whether it be a variety of stakeholders being part of a building project. All these voices need to be heard in the creation of these understandings.
Hi, my name's David Muir. I'm a facility planner from Perth. For our 3rd workshop, the Mayfield Project Team sought to transform a typical education brief. The purpose of this task was to put into practice all that we had learned and explored with regards to curiosity and apply it to real-world scenarios. In our working lives, whether we are facility planners, designers, or educators, we all work with briefs that set out parameters for school designs. The Mayfielders were presented with a typical education design brief for a secondary school. We were asked to review and transform the document so that it provided opportunity and flexibility to integrate elements of curiosity and creativity. We challenged the typical brief in an attempt to be more inclusive to all types of learners and to ensure sustainability principles were upheld. Aside from the typical design brief elements, we recommend future design briefs create spaces that enhance and connect to the natural environment, blurring the lines between indoor and outdoor, with opportunities for outdoor learning. We recommend external environments as an extension of the traditional classroom. Create spaces that are durable with buildings that last a minimum of 25 years, keeping in mind that trees will outlive building life expectancy. Spaces should also provide opportunities for technological and generational changes. Create spaces that provide a sense of belonging. Create flexible and adaptable learning spaces, allowing for a multitude of school and community uses over time. All learners should feel safe, fun, and creative. For more design brief elements, you'll need to purchase our document. Thanks, James. Next slide.
Hi everyone, my name is Liz and I work with the Facility Services team managing educational facilities around Tasmania. In one of our workshops, we were asked to pen what our individual design principles were on the mirror board. This image shows the collective thinking of the team. Using the design thinking methodology, we took each principle and grouped them based on similarities. We then themed each group with an overarching theme. The colored boxes that you see show what the themes are, namely people, emotions, discomfort, understanding, comfort, unknowns, and stimuli. Through this exercise, we also found some of the principles explicitly mention space, place, or an environment, hence an additional link to that theme. As a whole, there is no one dominant theme. Instead, they are all interconnected. Taking the exercise one step further, the themes were then sorted to a hierarchical order, highlighting how one factor affects the next to ultimately achieve creativity and curiosity. The thinking behind it was that people were the source and creators of a place. They emit emotion and produce stimuli. Questions of whether they were comfortable or uncomfortable, known or unknowns are then asked. Ultimately, these factors and questions could lead to a creative or curious moment. This diagram also shows how intertwined each hierarchical level is and how they could all trigger curiosity and creativity.
Thanks, Liz. My name's Ella Masters. I'm an architect and planner from Canberra. So as well as the design principles that Liz just touched on, I'm just going to briefly talk about sort of 3 key takeaways that we came up with. So the first one was to really nut out the differences and the links between curiosity and creativity. So an understanding that even though these 2 concepts are linked, they're actually quite different processes that require different physical settings to be successful. So curiosity thrives on not knowing all the answers and is a process of discovery, whereas creativity is a process that's enriched by already knowing all of the answers and then putting them together in new or unique ways. So we repeatedly identified curiosity as being a key motivator for learners, and that if used the right way is a really powerful tool to increase engagement, retention and understanding. Thanks. So the next really important key finding was that what was needed to facilitate curiosity was a comfortable and safe environment. So we understood this on 2 levels. So a spatial kind of understanding. So that was that we repeatedly found that learners made a highly personal choice around where they wanted to learn. So giving them options was really important. It was often sort of smaller spaces, so a variety of scale was also quite important, and inclusion of natural elements and soft furnishings that sometimes gave it a more residential feel. So the other thing that we really unpacked was safety on an organisational level. And so that is linking back to what Jana touched on with the touchline tool, and that's a shared understanding of how the space is used. So things like learners feeling safe to fail and then having the resilience to bounce back from basically not knowing all the answers. Thanks. And then the last part that we got to that became very clear when we were doing the process that David spoke about with the brief was that we really need to make a concerted decision to maximise engagement between stakeholders in the process around designing these spaces. So it was what we called the human factor. So where we're learning really needs to be developed in parallel with what we're learning, why we're learning, and how we're learning. So James is going to talk a little bit now about the guide. That's sort of a bit of a practical tool for pulling together a lot of the findings and the research outcomes that has come out of the last couple of months of work.
Hi everyone, my name is James Lewis. I'm an architect from Brisbane. I'm working at Fulton Trotter Architects. So the intention of our project team was to create a document that future designers, educators and policymakers can use as a strategy document to create a better built environment outcomes for learners. This section, we sought to consolidate our thinking from the 2020 Mayfield project and share suggestions for best practice and provide future steps that you might take as positive action for your learning environments. I suppose in the end, we settled on the idea of a flowchart as a way to graphically represent the process we went through, because there are so many overlaps and the interconnectedness between creativity and curiosity, as well as how those 2 ideas sort of connect into different learning environments, and also how they relate to the different professions that we all represented as part of the group. So the facility planners, the designers and the educators. Now you might be wondering why we haven't shown you the guide straight away. That was, I suppose, part of what we learned when we were looking at curiosity, was that it can stem out of not knowing all the answers. So in an endeavour to make you all a little bit curious, we're going to sort of slowly reveal it for you. But in general, there's 3 sort of main elements of the guide that you need to know a bit about. The first is the legend. All architects like a good legend. The second is a sort of stepping off point, so that allows sort of broadly the 3 professions to sort of plug into the guide at first and try and explain to people who I don't have the luxury of being here today, what the guide is about. And the third is a small curiosity and creativity explainer, which is a flowchart inside a flowchart that looks at the difference between the two ideas of curiosity and creativity. The legend has a series of tiles that sort of pick up different things. I suppose just broadly the start is the start and tries to explain in a little summary about what the idea of the guide is. The key steps sort of represent the key steps in the process of designing and planning and using a educational space, and so that allowed us to sort of plug in the different professions into this this flowchart. The information tab tiles were sort of contain various ideas or aspects of teaching spaces, whether that be physical or sort of more educational requirements. The prompts, the purple circles are quite important, as that allowed us a way of giving each profession a way to plug into this flowchart. The questions as well were there to help articulate the lines of questioning that various professions might pursue in the development of teaching spaces. So whether that be from a planning perspective, a design perspective, or as an educator. So, and they range from everything from have educators been consulted in the project to how would you describe the space. So there's quite a variety of questions in it. And the coloured tiles was an attempt to take out all of the sort of the broad and diverse findings we came to and try and categorise them to the different professions and also people outside of our group, so learners and generally everyone. The idea there was that once you're familiar with the guide and sort of run through from the top, you might then sort of start cherry picking different tiles based on whatever colour that you might be interested in. So say that be an educator or a planner. The stepping off point. So as you can see, so the three purple circles were for the planners, the educators, and the designers to sort of start with a bit of a premise around why you might be using this guide, and then sort of plug into that sort of planning and design process around how you might assess a learning space, and to start that sort of journey of trying to promote curiosity and or creativity in those spaces. As you can see, even this small section has a lot of arrows and interconnectivity, so that was a lot of fun to put together. And lastly, before we get to the actual guide itself, the explainer. So the idea there was just to try and compress and show graphically how curiosity and creativity are different. And I suppose broadly speaking, I suppose we've touched on a bit in the presentation already, but the creativity sort of requires more familiarity and comfort within a space. Sort of, to give an example, so an artist in their studio knowing where everything is so that they can get on with the creative endeavor of creating artwork. Whereas curiosity stems from a mixture of not knowing all the answers and confidence to explore and investigate what those answers might be. And without further ado, this is the guide. So as you can see, there's a fair bit of information in there, and it sort of branches off in all weird and wonderful directions. So unfortunately, we don't have the time or the technology to zoom in and give you a guided tour of every single tile, but I'd like to encourage you to get a copy of this as part of our Mayfield 2020 report and explore it at your leisure.
My name's Amanda Loffman. I'm an architect in Victoria working for Heed Architects, and it's my pleasure to do the thank you. So on behalf of the team, we'd really like to thank LEA and also our employees for giving us this wonderful opportunity to participate in the Mayfield project. A big thank you to Danny, who guided our team through the Mayfield process, and also to Angelina, who did a phenomenal job compiling and formatting the report. Thank you. And lastly to James, he was the one that set out the creativity and curiosity guide. Even though we all kept changing and having more input, then James would go in and sort it all out, so it looked good. Thank you. I'd like to finish with a quote from one of the educators in our team, Joe. The key components of learning environments, the physical space, furniture, learning curriculum goals, are vital aspects for all stakeholders to consider to reactivate curiosity and give space for lifelong learning. Thank you.
Well, fantastic. I'd like to, well, I think just from that short summary, I think you'd all agree that's another extraordinary program of inquiry that's been delivered by the Mayfield Group, really pushing the boundaries of imagination. Just in terms of what I've taken out of in my review of the document so far, I'm really interested in the idea of reactivating curiosity and learning over time and circumstances. And I think this year has shown what the change in circumstances can do in terms of reactivating curiosity. Also, the idea that curiosity is a significant trigger to deep learning, which is a big part of the research work that LEA has been doing over the last 5 years. And also, if coming at it from an architect's perspective, it's the whole idea of how spaces support curiosity and make it an enjoyable process. So I would encourage everyone to buy the report and explore the Curiosity and Creativity Guide, because one of the things you'll find is that you will actually be able to generate your own set of design principles from that process, which it will be amazing to see the results that people get from that process. So to wrap up, I'd like to thank Danny and Avril for the leadership on this program. I'd like to thank Eamon from Council for the support, and also to all you Mayfielders for 2020 for an outstanding job of doing this work remotely, and you should be very proud of the significant body of work you've produced. It's a record for perpetuity that we can all access as a ready guide. So thank you very much from everyone at LEA for your involvement during this process. So I think with that, if there's nothing else, I thank everyone for coming to the AGM tonight, and let's embark on the reconnection. And